Which veteran receiver might be in for a career year in a new uniform? How should you feel about drafting a rookie wide receiver who should be the top perimeter target on his new team? And who will be the 42 Joes that are going to be taking on the 42 industry pros in the 2024 FFPC Pros versus Joes Challenge? Plus, FFPC veteran drafter Shawn Green joins us to talk about Keenan Allen, Najee Harris, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of the Balkaholics and Ferrelliacs tuning in this evening. Welcome in to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship, conveniently located at myffpc.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. You follow me on X at Eric Balkman. You know me from the Better Sports Network's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and I don't know, probably some other things as well. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Ferrell Elliott, coming up on tonight's show. Ferrell and I are going to chat about the Rams offense. We're going to get into the Travis Kelce ADP slippage and more. And we're also going to speak with FFPC vet Shawn Green, joining the program to discuss Geno Smith, the 49ers wide receivers, and much more. You can connect with us on X at HSFF. I'm at Eric Balkman. And check out Ferrell's Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. Email the show at highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com if you have any questions for us. Now's the time to get them in. We'll try to get to all the chat room questions, X's, Facebook posts, and everything, emails and more in the fantasy feedback segment coming up later on in the program. Shout out to our audio engineer and my best friend, Bryce, and of course, our producer and mutual friend, Rob. Tomorrow is the day, ladies and gentlemen. If you are looking for free FFPC teams, time's running out. Here's what you do. Go to myffpc.com, register for your Fantasy Pros Championship drafts. If you register for one by tomorrow, midnight Pacific time, and draft that team by June 30th, you're going to get a free $35 FFPC team credit placed into your account. If you do that 2 more times, you'll get 2 more credits. So that's well over $100 in free teams if you take advantage of the FFPC early bird promotion, but it flies away at midnight Pacific time tomorrow. So make sure you're getting in on that. And remember, you'll get that $50 discount off your 3-pack of teams in the Fantasy Pros Championship as well. A $1 million grand prize is what everybody's chasing for in a $6 million prize pool. Don't forget about the FFPC main event, slow drafts going on right now. That is also going to have a $1 million grand prize too. We have 2 separate best ball tournaments going on. The Superflex has a $100,000 grand prize, just $35 to enter that. And of course, our classic best ball tournament now features a $300,000 grand prize. If you like playing fantasy football every single day out of the year, and why wouldn't you, especially if you're watching this show, check out the Empire Leagues and the Dynasty Startup Leagues we have at myffpc.com. Myffpc.com is where to go for that. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified by clicking on the notification bell. Every time we go live, you're going to know when we're popping on to talk a little fantasy football with you. More on that coming up by the end of the show. Let's bring in our co-host right now, ladies and gentlemen. You know him as Ferrell Elliott, the KFFSC boss. He is joining the program right now. Happy Friday, Ferrell.
Hey, Balky, how are you?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Excited to reveal these pros versus Joes combatants, or at least the Joes combatants. Darren Armani, the godfather of the pros versus Joes challenge, has been rolling out the pros in waves, so we know who the pros are going to be this year. I don't know if he's named all of them yet, but we will name all 42 Joes tonight. It's going to be an exciting time.
I think it's important as we go through the show tonight to talk about Mr. Armani's contribution to fantasy football and the mojo quite frequently, because I just completed my first FFPC main event team in the slow draft. I was playing to get some of the noted players, including the professor, who's going by a strange name this year, and I don't know what it's about. But, it was a good group of players. I think I drafted a pretty good team, and I got the players that my guys sort of came to me in the draft, which always makes you nervous when you're playing with really good players, because you say, well, I'm getting all my guys, but these are, so we'll have to see. Football is right around the corner, Balky. Players all left camp for most part, OTAs and mandatory camps, unless you're named Aaron Rodgers. Those are all done, and they go home for a couple of days and start back to work. You just don't know exactly what they're doing and where they're doing it.
What's crazy about this, I was talking with somebody about this yesterday. We are a little over 2 months away from live events in Cincinnati. And in less than 3 months, we're all going to be in Las Vegas with the season getting underway Thursday night, Friday night, and then obviously Sunday as well. I know it seems like it's a long ways away, but as Natalie Merchant once said, these are the days. And this is why we need to be drafting as much as we can, because the season's going to be upon us.
Need to be drafting, need to be planning, need to be locking down your time for those magical weekends. I cannot wait. I will fly. Maybe the listeners will get a kick out of this. I want to fly on Wednesday to Las Vegas, which is my mother's 99th birthday.
Oh,
and I said, Mom,
wow.
Is it okay if I fly on your birthday? She said, leave early. I don't want any big to do about my birthday. So I said, oh, all right. Well, nevertheless.
The fantasy football hustle right now in the YouTube chat. They said, let's go bring on the Joes. We will bring them out.
they just want to know.
I can tell
they're
you.
like in the coming of age movies where the kids line up to see if they got a role in the play. It's on the bulletin board in the hallway. It's just a cool down hustle.
We will. We're only minutes away. I promise.
Minutes away.
I believe that's Brian Drake, a guy who I've co-hosted shows with before. And
Brian Drake.
Yeah. I believe that's him, and we will tell you who you're going to be competing against, Brian, because he's one of the pros in this year's Pros versus Joes.
Oh, Brian's a pro.
He's a pro. He's a pro.
Well.
But he wants to start scouting the talent, I'm sure. But
well, no wonder he's nervous.
Yes, exactly. Before we get to it, I want to talk a little bit about Deontay Johnson, who's entering the final year of his contract, Ferrell. But he's open to signing an extension with his new team, the Carolina Panthers. If he does indeed sign an extension, I think it's going to bode well for Bryce Young. It's going to bode well for that offense in general. I'm just kind of curious to what your thoughts are on Deontay Johnson, no longer the Steeler, but now the Carolina Panther being drafted as wide receiver 36 at the 701 behind the likes of Chris Godwin and Calvin Ridley, but ahead of Jaden Reed and the rookie Ladd McConkey. Deontay Johnson was a target hog in Pittsburgh. Is that the role he's going to have in Carolina this year as well?
The target hog has not generated fantasy points for us. Last year, not a lot of catches, some touchdowns. Previous year, 80-plus catches, no touchdowns. It's time for him to reward the people that are drafting him. And based on where he's being drafted, I think a combination of those 2 years would have to be for him. But, this is the most under-the-radar good player move that I've seen in a long time. But matching him with this coach, with the quarterback, with I like it for fantasy players. I think he's at the top of his value. I wouldn't want to pay that for him. Balky, can you tell us who went before and who went after him?
Yeah, for Deontay Johnson?
Yes.
Yeah, you're looking at Chris Godwin and Calvin Ridley basically right before him at just a couple of picks before him. Mm-hmm. And then Jaden Reed basically going a couple picks after, Ladd McConkey about a half round after, for wide receivers, that is.
Yeah, those guys, he can mix in with that group, and that's fair enough. I might like to take another direction there. In other words, I'm saying this player may not be a target for me, but I'm not going to complain if he ends up being on one of my teams. And if I like him, if you like him, I could make a case for him because I believe in the coach. I believe in the player. If I'm the player's agent, I'm going to hold off a little bit because I don't think I want to negotiate after a trade and 51 catches. So I want to work on this deal maybe throughout the season. It's a make good season for him. He needs a bounce back. if he believes in the coach, if his camp believes in the coach and the opportunity he's getting, and he's not talking so much about a contract, that's probably good for fantasy players.
You know, the other thing too, I wonder if are he and Adam Thielen duplication of talent, the duplication of skills on that offense. And I know Adam Thielen, you know, he crushed it towards the start of the season, really fell off after that. But it remains to be seen what happens.
Did he really fall off?
I think he did quite a bit. Yes.
Did he? I'm not so sure about that.
I'm going to bring it up right now.
I thought it was a little more consistent than that. But you know, you're probably right. But yeah, he had very, very good early numbers, but his numbers throughout the year to get to 106 catches, you got to catch balls in a lot of games.
So here's what it was, Ferrell. So he first game of the season, he only had 2 catches. Then he had 7-11, 7-11, 11-8, which was awesome.
Yeah,
he did slow down a little bit. 5, 6, 8, 1, 3, 5, 4, but then he did finish the season with 6 for 94, 6 for 38, and then last game of the season he only had 2. So he did have 103 catches last year, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
But the majority of that production was in the first part of the season. So I guess he didn't fall off, but he couldn't keep up what he was doing. And I guess, quite frankly, nobody at his age in that offense should be keeping up with it anyway.
Well, you know, there's not a lot of mileage on that player. Thielen is a tough son of a gun, and he had to fight to get a chance to play. There were 3 years that he didn't play or largely didn't play much in Minnesota. I think at least 2. He was a practice squad player. So, you know, he's going to be the kind that he's going to be the kind that you're going to have to drag off the field. So Thielen's not going to catch 106 this year, but he can catch 75 and still be useful. Johnson moved techniques that are very, very different. Johnson has already exceeded his production as a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's already exceeded his 3rd-round draft picks and his expectations coming out of University of Toledo. And I think he's won some games for fantasy players, especially. I think his big year with 11 touchdowns was 2020, if I recall correctly. You know, he's won for fantasy owners before, and those guys that have a soft spot for him, he might be rewarded by rostering him again.
Yeah, and we shall see what happens. That Carolina Panthers offense, I think, is going to be fascinating to watch this season.
Mm-hmm.
A rookie wide receiver, we're not talking about Xavier Legette in Carolina. Let's talk about Keon Coleman.
No, we're not.
You know, we're not tonight. 4-year deal, just over $10 million, $4 million signing bonus for Coleman. This is a guy that ended up probably could have gone in the first round. He goes in the early second, and Josh Allen apparently likes him quite a bit. He is really good with contested catches, and you say, oh, that's good. Well, when you have a lot of contested catches, it means you're not getting a lot of separation. So it's a yin and yang thing. Keon Coleman right now, Ferrell, in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Again, shout out to Darren Armani for this ADP data, fantasymojo.com. Wide receiver 41 at the 804. This is Christian Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, Rashee Rice territory. Are you on board with the rookie in Buffalo at that price this year, given the fact that Stephon Diggs is no longer a Bill?
Wow. That's a little higher than I want to pay, but I love the player. That's why you draft early, Balkman. Mm-hmm. That's why you draft early. And you know, if he shows up, and he's got such good size, and there's a lot of receivers in this Buffalo group that have good size, and then the smaller guys have got good move elements. I really, you cannot argue with it. I don't want to push him any higher until I see him on the field. Rookie receivers, you know, can hit the wall, and playing in Buffalo from a guy from it's Florida State, right, Balky?
Yep.
For a guy from, you know, the South, it's a long season for a rookie player to have to come out and respond. But I love the player. He's got a great jacket collection, man. You know, and he's got a great personality, and he, you know, those are the kind of guys that step up when needed. So I got no complaints. I sure would have a hard time. You know, we might talk about some older players later on. I sure would have a hard time drafting him in front of Hopkins. You know, Hopkins just catches 1,000 yards every year. That's all.
Yeah, no, that's true. And Keon Coleman's got to get the red jacket from Macy's now. That's the one he said he needs to get. Or maybe it's a blue one. I can't remember. In any event, Keon Coleman and Buffalo are going to be fun to watch. The last thing I want to bring up before we make our Pros versus Joes announcement is Matthew Stafford. He's participating in Rams minicamp this week, and he's expected to be at training camp on time, according to Sean McVay. Now, Stafford has no guaranteed money on his current deal with the Rams after this year. So you would think that given his status with the team, his stature in the league, that he would ask for more money or renegotiate anything. Apparently that hasn't happened yet. And I don't want to necessarily talk about the contract here, Ferrell, but what's interesting is it wasn't that long ago when he had all these elbow issues and these neck issues. And we were wondering, is this guy's career done? And he's still plugging along. The Rams have improved their offensive line. Defense is not going to be good in LA this year, so Stafford's going to have to throw it. He's got Kyron Williams, Blake Corrin, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, like a lot of talented pass catchers on this team. And yet FFPC drafters are picking him as quarterback 20 right now, not until the 16th round. He's going behind the likes of Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins, Justin Herbert. I wonder if you think that's too low, because it seems kind of low where you can get Matthew Stafford as quarterback 20 this year.
It is. And, our FFPC drafters fall in love with quarterbacks that can use their feet. And, that's not what we have here. And so that's why he's going to go late. And the player, he's not going to be the number 2 or number 3 quarterback when you're picking Lamar Jackson or any other player that fits that bill of, and there's becoming more of them and they're being more successful. So I see a potential of, you can talk to me all day long about quarterback and his feet, but when you see a potential of a 40 touchdown quarterback being drafted here, and then this is 5 rounds after Cousins, who's probably another 40 touchdown pass quarterback. How do you want to build your team? How do you want to play? But I think, Balky, you're giving guys a great idea. And what makes you say the Rams defense won't be any good?
Well, I think Aaron Donald covered up a lot for that team last year. So that's going to be a big hole that's going to be tough to replace on that team.
Right.
And obviously this is be the second year without Jalen Ramsey. I don't necessarily know if they address that adequately in the secondary. So I guess maybe they won't be a train wreck, but I see a lot of shootouts in their future, Ferrell. I see a lot of shootouts.
And that's what we're calling. If you see shootouts in the future in that division of which they're playing in, this is an interesting player. Now I want to go sign up for another FFPC team tonight and shoot for a Rams quarterback.
Yeah, that's right. Well, let's do this. I know a lot of people came in and are saying, shoot. I can't believe they have not announced the Pros versus Joes.
Oh, yeah.
Let's do it
right now.
They
got to have it.
So here's what we're going to do. I have the 42 names of the Joes that are going to be participating
Start
in the
reading them.
Pros versus Joes competition. These Joes are going to be facing off against 42 industry pros. We have 7 separate 12-team drafts. We do this every year. It is going to be 6 industry pros in each draft and 6 FFPC Joes. The winner of each of these leagues will end up getting a free main event for the FFPC in 2025, where you can battle for $1 million for free. So you're basically getting a free main event. How the FFPC Joes qualified for this is they either put a deposit in or they paid for their team in full by the early bird deadline, which was the end of May 31st. We had a random drawing, and these are the names that came out. So good luck to all of you. These are not in alphabetical order, so listen to the whole list and you might hear your name. So without further ado, here we go. First on the list, we have Marion Hyman, then Gary Heiberger, Brian Gervelin, former guest of the show, a couple of former guests. Actually, the next 4 names on this, we've all had on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour before. Craig Magnuson, Don Terminello, Glenn Pilapil. I know
easy
Glenn,
for you to say, Bob.
Glenn's got.
Did a guy named Smith win anything?
Yes,
just could be.
There could be a Smith on this list, but Glenn is going to fry me because I know I got his name wrong. We had him on the show a few months ago. Rob Abbott, also welcome to the Joes list this year. Moving forward here, Ron Chan, Daniel Wright, Ian Hubbard, and Rob Cannon. Those are the first 11 names, it looks like here. Rob Cannon on number 11. Then we have Robert Trenz, Jeremy Slick, Wilson Moy, who we just had on the show probably 3 months or so ago, 2-3 months ago.
Missing
He's
Wilson
going to be
already.
Absolutely. Jim Robertson, a guy I've had on the show and the road of his high stakes slowdown many times. Jared Hines, welcome to the Joes for 2024. Ferrell, our mutual friend and longtime best ball nuisance, a guy who's won a ton of money in the FFPC. Danny Mueller will be in the Joes camp this year as well.
Good for Danny.
Nick Thompson, another former guest of the show. Derek Kappas is among the Joes this year. John Bauman, Matt Stone, Dan Seidenfaden, and then Brad Petrie made it, Ferrell, our former KFFSC.
And he'll bring along his buddy Larson with him.
I would imagine that they would be drafting the team together, yes. Ryan Santos, welcome aboard. I know he was posting on X, hoping he made it. He made the cut. Ryan Santos, another former guest of the show, as well as Rob Vieira, another former guest of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Let's get into some more names as we have 25 down, 17 to go. Todd McIntyre, Javon King, Richard Lowe, and Glenn Lowy, a super talented FFPC player. He's going to be a force to be reckoned with in this competition. He is a Joe this year, as is Michael Zuka. The Mongooses will once again be in the Pros versus Joes competition. Our mutual friend and a guy we've competed against before, Ferrell, Billy Van Ormer. He'll be in it as well. Another guy who is posting on Facebook, hoping he'd make the cut. I'm pleased to announce Scott Hoyt. Welcome to the Pros versus Joes this year as well. Scott, who I believe participated in 2018, he is back here 6 years later. So congratulations there. A few names left here: Ryan Cleary, Kevin Borg, Scott Kekoen, Yar Tchaikovsky, and another former guest of the show, Robert Linkowski as well. Just a few names left here. Noel Coombs, Patrick Lynch, who we had on the show many, many years ago. He will be a Joe. Chris Sims, and then the final name here on the list, a guy who was on the show, I believe 3 or 4 months ago, I want to say, Michael Mann. That is the entire list of the Pros versus Joes this year, or the Joes list. We will be posting this. I know Darren Armani will be contacting you. FantasyMojo.com is going to have this list posted, and he'll be contacting you to find out which draft spot works best for you, or which draft day, I should say, works best for you. Those are the 42 names. Congratulations to the Joes. We'll get this posted probably on our message boards or on the FFPC website as well. So in case you missed this, you will be able to check it out there.
And all of these guys should be Mojo subscribers. You know, if Darren were to call me on the phone just one time and speak to me, I would buy a couple of friends subscriptions.
Exactly. Yes.
Talk to him.
Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring in our guest for tonight. He started playing in the FFPC just last year, but he's got a wealth of fantasy football experience to share with us tonight. He's going to share his thoughts on how he plans to win $1 million in the FFPC main event this season. You follow him on the X, or at least you should be following him on the X, at _green_1. That's THA_ the color green _ and then the number 1. Please welcome aboard Mr. Shawn Green. Shawn, welcome into the show tonight, man.
How you guys doing?
Doing good. Doing good. Now, Shawn, I want this is kind of an awkward way to start off an interview, but I did just lie a couple of minutes ago. I said I listed all 42 Joes. I withheld one name. I only put out 41 names. The final 42nd Joe, the final name on that list, is Mr. Shawn Green. So congratulations being a Joe this year. Fantastic stuff.
I'm so excited. I was so disappointed when I didn't hear my name, but thank you guys so much. Thank you for that surprise.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it was a random drawing. So you can thank us, but we really had very little to do with it. So
you suffered through the bulky tease show.
I did. Yeah. I was sitting here just almost okay. Keep going. Oh my gosh! But it's like the roller coaster of emotions right now. Awesome. I'm so excited.
Well. We're glad to have you, and actually, this is exciting because you're not only going to be drafting Pros versus Joes, which we'll be covering those drafts live on this show, but you're actually on our live Fantasy Pros Championship coverage on Tuesday, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I the last one I tried to join, but I was a little bit late, so I just participated in the chat. But for this one on Tuesday, I signed up. I was like, I got to get in one of these. So yeah, I will be there Tuesday.
Aiden LaCory and I will have the call on that. So, awesome. And I'll send you a link to the show. Maybe you can make a pick live on air. That'd be tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get into to the show tonight, Shawn. Before we talk to you about fantasy football, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing for a living when you are not winning FFPC leagues?
I'm a mailman. I've been doing this for about 18 years. That's been my career, but fantasy football has always been my number one hobby. I've always wanted to do the high stakes thing, and it just took me a while to get off my butt and actually do it. And last year we did a super bracket, a couple fantasy pros. We finished. My buddy and I, we split a team. We finished 5th overall in the super bracket. playoff. So that was fun. It was a good challenge. You want to see how you stack up against other people. When you invest that much time and effort, I want to see, can I compete at this level? And I feel very confident that I can. And that's one of the reasons I was really hoping to get into pros versus Joes, because I want to see where I stack up against all the pros, or as they put it themselves. They're humble, but they're legit.
The worst you'll do is 24th.
Right. That's goals.
That's the worst.
Goals.
That's the worst.
Exactly. I mean, but yeah, I'm excited to be in this, and this is a blast.
It's gonna be fun to have you, Shawn. Welcome aboard.
I appreciate you.
When I'm playing in the FFPC, I am excited to get guys that have put up numbers for me in the past. And every year, some of these old school guys, we were just talking about Hopkins a minute ago. Every year, fellow fantasy players will say, "Oh, that guy's done. That guy's Balky." What's that expression that I don't like about the? Oh, he's washed. He's washed.
Washed, yeah.
Short for washed up. Okay, now they don't ever say that about Travis Kelce, despite his advancing age, and despite the fact he had a couple games where he was dragging his leg behind him last year. He still was everything we want in a fantasy tight end. He's going at about the 2.4. If I'm in the second round and Travis Kelce's on the board, he's going on my team. Do you feel the same way about this or any other aging player that some people may be turning their back on? Or do you think this might be the year that certain wise guys, so to speak, will tell you they're out of the Kelce business?
For me personally, Kelce's my tight end one this year. I know there's a lot of hype with Laporta, and I understand it, rightfully so. But for me, Kelce last year, it was a down year, I guess you can say. But the whole offense was down, right? But for me this year, I'm still taking Kelce. That's still my first choice. Actually, I did a Fantasy Pros draft on Memorial Day, and I took Kelce at the 1.8 because I had a build that I wanted to try, and I wanted to get a start with the 3 tight ends, so I started with Kelce 1.8, McBride in round 2, and then Ingram in round 3.
Nice.
For me personally, McBride is my guy, but Kelce's number 1 for me this year. So
do you think he produces number 1 points?
I don't see why not.
No, I don't either.
They went out and picked. The whole thing with Rashee Rice maybe being suspended, we don't know that yet. They went and got Xavier Worthy, who's a field stretcher. They went and got Hollywood Brown, who kind of works a little bit in the middle of the field as well, down the field. I don't see why not. He's going to open up the field for Kelce. And like he said the other day, ride me till the wheels fall off. and as a 49er fan, the Super Bowl was painful because Kelce, once Dre Greenlaw got hurt, Kelce was just unstoppable.
Yeah.
The playoffs against Baltimore, he was vintage Kelce. So I'm still not personally seeing a fall off, even with the age.
And I think, I guess maybe the age thing, I mean, obviously that's valid where people might have a problem with it. But I think the other aspect with Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, I think some people take that to, oh, okay, well, they're going to add those players on. That's obviously going to take away from Kelce. But I think those are complementary players. They're not going to they're going to be running different routes, and they're opening things up for Kelce too. So I think that's something to keep in mind going forward as well. I'm with you actually on Kelce.
Rubio sure makes a good point here in the chat, Balky. Team just knows how to win, and I want players on a winning team.
Right.
Keenan Allen, why do you think FFPC players should be focusing in on him as the correct Bears receiver to draft this year, Shawn?
The thing I think with Keenan, he's older, right? We were just talking about with Kelce. He's had injury history with hamstrings and whatnot. But the whole offense is dynamic. They got the next generational quarterback. My one issue with that offense is, can they sustain 3 receivers? Or does Rome, is he kind of just a late season, injury fill-in guy? DJ Moore put up good numbers last year with Fields. Keenan was my guy last year with Herbert. Him and Herbert, they had that chemistry. I don't know how it's going to play out this year with, sharing with DJ Moore, who, last year he had Mike Williams on the other side. Keenan's going, round 6. His ADP is like 6'8", 6'9", somewhere in that range. I don't know exactly, but he's a tough one for me because the potential is there. He's the kind of guy that a veteran quarterback can lean on because he's a great route runner. He can get those little short, quick hitches and whatever else. DJ Moore is going to spread the field a little bit more. But you're getting DJ Moore.
We're in a situation with this quarterback that I think a word that I hear around the NFL is, well, this guy is young, which is code word to say, he hadn't quite figured it out yet. And Keenan Allen doesn't look to me like he suffers through anything that does not run well, and when coaches aren't getting him the ball, when they're not calling the play, when he had problems with Herbert, he let it be known in a professional way. He doesn't pout, yell, and scream, but he let it be known. I don't know if I'm going to link in to the chemistry between these two. I really want to see it, and I don't know when we're going to see it, Balky.
We may not. I mean, that's the thing. I was talking about how interesting the Carolina Panthers offense is going to be this year. Chicago Bears, I think, is going to be that's like the Panthers offense on steroids, right? Because you have a team that we still don't know how they're going to gel together because they have so many new pieces, including the offensive line, but the backfield as well with Swift and the brand new quarterback too. But I do think that they are more talented overall than the Panthers, which there's offenses like this every year. You want to, they're so difficult to try to pin down, but if you get them right, they can take you a long way for sure.
It's not difficult trying to pin down anything in Pittsburgh, guys. I think I know what they want to do. I think they want to run the ball, and now you got 2 running backs there, and Balky's just done a great job in our last few shows of highlighting players on the same team with big draft capital gaps between them. And I think the gap between Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren is narrowing. However, I don't really think it matters. I think both these players have a great potential in this offense because I think there's 450 carries in there for them based on what the team did in the draft and how I think they want to win. Do you agree with me, or do you see one of these players valued over the other?
I think people like Jaylen Warren more because of his pass catching. I think he had 60 or so catches last year. That whole offense, it was a mess at quarterback last year. We assume, that Russell Wilson and potentially Justin Fields, will get in there. Maybe they'll check the ball down a bit. They don't have a lot of receiver weapons. I don't know how it's going to play out with Roman Wilson, but I think it depends what your flavor is for your team, how your team is built with those running backs. I mean, I think if I'm going in the hero, 61. If I'm going in the hero RB build, I probably would want Jaylen Warren as my 2. I mean, you're going to get he scored a few more points than Najee last year. I mean, Najee is more of the grinder. He's going to get the goal line work. But the biggest wild card, obviously, as we all know, it's Arthur Smith. Is he going to put Cordero Patterson back there? And then if he does that, how does that play out? So there's factors, but I've personally leaned more towards Najee myself. One of the reasons for that is they didn't pick up his 5th year on his contract. And if I kind of look at it like how the Raiders were with Josh Jacobs, they didn't pick up his 5th year. They ran him into the ground. He had a career year. Obviously, he didn't have a guy like Jaylen Warren, behind him. But, I mean, I could see them just run him into the ground and ship him out, and Warren becomes their guy.
So which quarterback here in Pittsburgh?
See, I lean Wilson personally, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if Fields came in, if Wilson has a couple bad games, maybe around the bye week, just depending. They'd say, let's just put Fields in and see what we got.
I think both I saw a report on television this week. Both these quarterbacks were sacked over 40 times last year in Chicago and Denver, amongst the most in the league. I think what we're dealing with here with these running backs is establish a running game and then a play action passing game. And you're right. Warren would benefit in that. So would the tight end, Freiermuth here.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's just there's no reason not to get in business with some of these Pittsburgh players with where they're going. Balky, has that gap narrowed between?
It's. I mean, like basically, there. Zach Moss is going between them for running backs, but Harris is running back 25. Warren is running back 27, and they're separated essentially by 3 picks. I mean, it's really, really razor close between Harris
pick
and
your
Warren.
poison.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, and Ferrell, you brought this up, but look at what the Steelers did with their draft, right? First round pick, Troy Fautanu from Washington, a guard. Zach Frazier, a center from West Virginia in the second round. In the fourth round, they get Mason McCormick, a guard out of South Dakota State. I mean, this is just bulking up the interior of that line. And yeah, I mean, maybe it helps some passing, but I think you bulk up the interior of your line because you want to bully other teams. And that's a division that is built for bullies with Cleveland, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, right? And you have a situation where you trade Deontay Johnson away, but you bring in Roman Wilson. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought he was a pretty good run blocker at Michigan, too. Like, that's one of the things that he did really well. And I know you're a Michigan fan, Shawn. Like Roman Wilson, I'm excited about him for fantasy. But that dude, like, you bring all these players in, it's pretty clear what Pittsburgh wants to do. So, again, zeroing in on the right running back, and we've heard nothing but positive stuff about Najee Harris so far. I know he's dealing with some kind of injury right now, but Mike Tomlin says it's not a big deal. So, given where you can get these guys in the 8th round, at end of the 7th, early 8th round, that's going to be interesting this year as well, as far as those players are.
Right.
A player I did want to talk about. We don't talk about quarterbacks on this show a whole lot, but when we do, we like to talk about Geno Smith, quarterback 26 right now in the 19th round. This is a guy who has DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba at his disposal in Seattle. You think FFPC players are letting him slip too far? He's basically not even being drafted as a backup quarterback right now, Shawn.
You know, last year I was all in on Geno. He was my guy. I was like, I want him as my backup anywhere. You know, when they picked up JSN, I'm like, sky's the limit. Well, they had Shane Waldron, and that's my only concern. Him going to Chicago. But now they bring in Grubb from Washington, whose offense is catered around the pass. Charbonnet is a good pass catching back. The offensive line is a little shaky in Seattle, I believe. But I think as a backup quarterback, why not? I mean, it depends on, one thing that I've noticed, a lot of quarterbacks are slipping this year, whereas last year they were all smoked up the board. You would see guys going early quarterback. Well, this year I've noticed, even in that draft on Tuesday, guys are falling to the 10, 11, 12, 13. And it's, that's kind of where it's pushing Geno down towards the end of the draft, the 18, 19, 20. But as a backup, why not? I mean, if you want to play your matchup, like, where you have your bye week, see who the Seahawks are playing, maybe you want to take the shot with that. But I think you can do worse. I mean, I've seen people taking shots on J.J. McCarthy, Daniel Jones coming off the injury. I would rather take a shot with Geno myself, still as a backup.
And Geno played last year with a lot of physical problems, nagging physical problems.
That's true.
He could get on the field, but he had to be hurting. And there's not a more loved quarterback amongst the players within the NFL. Whenever we do talk quarterback, when Balky brings him up on the show, I have to do a quick look on social media and make sure that quarterback wasn't traded to the Packers. Still in shit. But, okay, here's another quarterback that's not traded to the Packers. And this is actually a quarterback question. David Njoku has shown tremendous athletic promise. He gets off the bus and you go, well, there is a beast of a player. Mm-hmm. And he flashes great plays. But for fantasy players, it's a sometimes yes, oftentimes no. And more than often, you're disappointed with this player. With Deshaun Watson returning, and now having a full season with this tight end, can you make, and many of the guys that are regulars on the show have made their comments that there's 7 elite tight ends, and Njoku isn't one of them. But he's knocking on the door maybe if he and Watson can develop something. Do you agree or disagree?
Me personally, I like Njoku, but I have him more as a late tight end 1. He's near the bottom, I guess. I've done a couple drafts on FFPC, and I've taken him as my tight end 2 in a few of those. I like the tight end premium. I don't know how it's going to play out with Watson. Is he going to revert back to the Houston Deshaun Watson? Is he going to be injured still? Is he fully engaged because he got his money? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that they went and signed Jameis Winston, and we all know he's willing to wing it down the field no matter what. He's going to, 30-30, right?
Yep.
I don't know if Njoku's going to have that run that he had with Flacco at the end of last year, because he had some monster games. The targets, I don't know how the targets, with Cooper, and then they went and traded for Jerry Jeudy. But I still view personally Njoku to me as a lower tight end 1. Like you said, like there's the 7 guys, and then there's that range. With Brock Bowers.
And I'm just not sure. Well. Okay, Bowers or Njoku, which one?
Me personally, I'm taking Njoku.
There you go. Okay.
Because Bowers, they still have Mayer. I don't know who the quarterback is going to be for Vegas. Adams is a target hog. I don't know.
And you bring up something interesting in Vegas, and I'll tell you, I don't think it matters who the quarterback is. I believe this team is going to do enough offensively to make fantasy players and Raider fans happy, because this team's whole dimension and whole direction is to be known by their defense. So I'll just throw that out there. If you're sleeping on the Raiders defense, there's your 20th round defense.
Yeah, interesting. Good. Raiders defense tips from Ferrell tonight.
There you go.
Where else?
We're talking about Joe Flacco and the Raiders defense. We're covering it all tonight. This is what happens when you have a guy like Shawn Green come on the show. He opens up these vectors of communications. It
gets you thinking. Yeah, it gets you thinking.
You did a good job booking people, buddy.
Well, thank you so much. But the guests are really they take care of themselves. You're going to be taking care of yourself on Tuesday night, Shawn. You have the 6th pick in the Fantasy Pros Championship draft that night.
I don't know. I don't even know if it's fully.
I know it's filled. I know it's filled. I know it's filled.
Oh, okay.
I thought I looked at it earlier, and I thought I saw you. You're in the middle for sure. I know that. I thought it was 6. It could have been 7. But do you have any kind of philosophy where you differ your draft strategy at all when you're not on the ends, that you're going to be picking in the middle?
It's kind of weird. Most of my drafts thus far in FFPC I've been pick 8. So I'm kind of like, well, that's my spot now. But in the middle, I'm looking somewhere, I want to ideally I'd like to get a good receiver, JJ, Chase, Amon-Ra, whoever falls down in there. I do love my running backs. I'm old school. I've been playing fantasy since 97. Running backs were the thing, right?
King.
I do love Bijan and Brees, but I kind of like to let the board play, see how it falls. I don't like to go in necessarily with a dead set strategy with my pick. I want to be flexible, because you never know. One of those tight ends slides back to me in round 2, and I'm like, well, I was going to take another running back or receiver, but now I'm going here, not expecting those guys to be on the board. I was telling you earlier when I did the one on Memorial Day, I wanted to get the 3 tight ends to start. So I was dead set. I'm going to pass some players, and it's going to kill me, but I want to try to get this build because I want to see how it plays. Being the 6th pick, I know I have an option to get one of the elite receivers or one of the top 3 running backs, just depending on who else is, what other people view. But, watching these other drafts, I like to wait. I want to wait on a quarterback, ideally.
Yep. You preaching to the choir for sure. Like, I love waiting on quarterback too. Single quarterback league. I just have especially this year when you talk about too, like, it seemed like they were more at a premium in 2023 drafts. In 2024, Shawn, we're not seeing that.
And it's amazing how every conversation we have, the purpose of pushing down the quarterbacks while elevating some of the guys who already are down at the bottom is just Balky's way to try to get to Jordan Love. And I think that might be a very, very good strategy for Balky, because
if it works,
most of the things you do work. But, I want Christian Watson on my teams this year. I'm a Christian Watson fan. Your thoughts about this player, because I think that's a risk I can live with.
I did an early Fantasy Pros back in March, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up getting Christian Watson as my wide receiver 4.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to take the shot.
Yeah.
You know, the injuries, we all know. You know, he had that stretch with Aaron Rodgers his rookie year, whatever. Last year, he hit a couple flashes. It's a tough one because they have so many weapons in Green Bay.
Yeah.
So, like you said with Balky, like with getting Jordan Love, I feel like that might be the play because each week it might be a different guy. You're going to have Wicks, you're going to have Reed, you know, you're going to have Watson, Bo Melton, whoever, Dobbs. But for Watson specifically, if his hamstrings are better, you know, he's working with a specialist on that. I mean, he's going round 8, 9-ish, something like that.
Absolutely.
You know,
yes.
Right. And I mean, you know, and Jaden Reed's going not farther ahead. It's all your personal preference really with those receivers, I think. But I kind of like to just see who falls of the group.
Mm-hmm.
But Jordan Love, to me, like you just get him and you reap the rewards of whoever he's throwing to in that.
Smart.
But Watson, for me, if he's healthy, I'm willing to take the shot. You're going to have some down weeks, but
there's four receivers, I should say, being drafted in the Fantasy Pros Championship right now from the Packers. Reed and Watson are very, very close to each other. Reed is in the early 7th. Watson's in the early 8th. Dobbs is at the end of the 11th, and Dontavian Wicks is in the mid 13th. If we include pass catchers, Josh Jacobs in the 3rd, Marshawn Lloyd in the 11th, Luke Musgrave in the 11th, Tucker Kraft is in the 18th, A.J. Dillon's in the 18th. I don't know how much we could need to count on him. But you're right. I mean, the Packers might be better best ball options than managed league options this year. As far as Watson goes, normally I would say, yeah, I'm kind of out on this. I'm not really buying into the whole hamstring, thing. And I hope it works. I hope they did discover something. I know that it was an asymmetry that he had between his leg strength between one leg or the other. And I know that asymmetry they've almost cut it in half, and it's actually almost right to where he wants it right now. Now that's great, but it's got to translate to the football field, right? And so if that translates to the football field, fantastic, because he's an 8th round pick right now. And I can get on board with that. If he gets too much higher, then you not only have to take the injuries into account, you have to take into account Romeo Dobbs, Wicks, Jaden Reed, all these other guys too. Like, what are we really paying for? Am I paying above sticker for something that's not going to come through? Not necessarily to the fault of Watson, but to the fault of there's a lot of different ways the Packers can win on offense.
They have a lot of mouths to feed there.
They do, yeah.
And you're going to have some up and down weeks. If you take them, you just ride with them and hope for the best.
Let's go into some emails here for you, Shawn. First one's from Brad in Atlanta. Which 49ers receiver do you like best at cost this year? Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel? To give you an idea and the viewers an idea of where these players are going, Ayuk, wide receiver 16 in the middle of the 3rd round. Deebo Samuel, wide receiver 23 in the middle of the 4th round. So about a round separating them. Question here is Ayuk is the juice worth the squeeze to take Ayuk a round earlier before Deebo Samuel, Shawn?
So right now with Ayuk holding out potentially with the contract situation, that's a little concerning because we've seen the guys that if they don't come to camp on time, they hold out, they fall behind, they run the risk of injuries and whatnot. For me, if he gets into camp, I'm still taking Ayuk. Ayuk to me is the number one guy. Deebo brings a different element to this offense, because he runs the ball. He does the short, the screen, and he can take it to the house. He just runs the guys over. But I still lean Ayuk personally, but I don't think you can go wrong with either. I think it's just how do you build your team? Are you starting, is Ayuk maybe your 3rd receiver? You could do a lot worse than that. If Deebo your 3rd receiver, same thing. In best ball, obviously, it's always a different situation, but I still lean Ayuk personally. That's my choice. So
you're going up with Ayuk. Ayuk is worth it for you at that point.
I think so, 100%. As long as he's in camp on time.
Yeah, and he really doesn't. I mean, Ferrell, you know this better than anybody. He doesn't really have any recourse but to report eventually, right?
Right.
That is true.
Yeah. Another Wolverines question here for a final email I have for you tonight for Shawn. This is Chris in Queens. Hey, Shawn, is Blake Corum enough for you to stay away from Kyron Williams in the third round of FFPC drafts this year? We appreciate the email from you tonight, Chris in Queens. If we look at Kyron Williams, I didn't think he slipped to the third, but maybe he is a third-round pick right now. Kyron Williams, 210. He's still at the 210, which I guess to Chris's point is even worse, that Kyron Williams is still going in the second round. What's the Blake Corum effect going to have on Kyron Williams, and have you been staying away from Williams because of Corum?
I'm not a big Williams guy myself. I mean, last year he was great. Obviously, he won people a lot of money down the stretch. He was great. He was getting fed the ball like crazy, and McVay likes him. Watching Corum over his entire Michigan career, he's a guy. He's a solid runner. He always reminded me kind of Frank Gore. Like, he always found the hole.
Yeah.
He's not explosive, but he does it. He just grinds and he gets the yards. And that's a tough one for me because I do like Corum as a later round. Like if you're doing the hero build, and you want to just get a couple backs, he's the kind of guy I'm targeting. Obviously, I mean Kyron. I don't know. That's a tough one for me personally. A lot of people still like Kyron, but I think 210 is a little too rich for me. If I can get him more towards the mid to late third, early fourth, I'm more interested then.
And I do think he is going to slip. I think it's going to happen, especially if we get closer to the season. Kyron Williams was a player that is not a pedigree guy, came out of nowhere last year.
Right.
I think drafters have become smarter over the years to understand. Look no further than Raheem Mostert's ADP this year, right? Guy gets 21 touchdowns last year. You'd think, he's got to be in, 15 years ago, he would have been a first-round pick this year. That's not the case anymore.
Exactly.
He's washed.
Yeah, he's washed.
He's been washed for the last 4 years.
He is sparkling clean. He's so washed.
Yes,
but that's my point is I do think Kyron Williams is going to slip because I think people understand, like, look, there's a lot of things that really went in his favor this year that because of regression to the mean, they're probably they're not all going to go in his favor. Yeah, he stayed relatively healthy. I know he missed a few games, but when he was in there, he got all the work. He was extraordinarily efficient, something that he wasn't really he wasn't all that efficient in college at Notre Dame. So I think, and then you have the team saying, look, we need to make sure that we either have a guy right behind Kyron Williams or we have a guy that can step in where our offense doesn't miss a beat if Williams were to go down or he's not effective. And they invest that draft capital into Blake Corum. To me, this is a signal to the rest of us that before we click on Kyron Williams at the end of the second round, we need to think long and hard, use all that 60 seconds and make absolutely sure Kyron Williams is the right pick. I'm with you. I don't think he's the right pick for me in the second round. We'll talk about maybe mid to late third, early fourth. If he does, I don't know if he slips to the fourth round. He might, but I do think some slippage is coming. Ferrell, we have one more final question for Shawn that's coming right now.
Okay. Who is the hard fade for you? The guy that you're just not going to get involved with, and then who you've given us a real good feel about, what you think about Kelsey and things like that. What's a guy maybe later in the draft, late 7, 8, 9, or perhaps even in the double digits that you want to get on every football team?
A guy I want to get or a guy I want to fade?
Give it two questions.
Yep.
You got to handle two at a time. This is a dual situation here. It's yep.
So for me, for a fade, it's got to be Nick Chubb.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, I was looking at Nick Chubb as a late first, early second guy. He's a guy, he's going to grind. He's going to score you points, whatever. Well, that injury is horrible. It was awful. And it's his second time he's had that on his knee. He's 28 years old. I don't know when he's coming back. I don't know. He's probably going to start on the pup.
Yeah.
And then they have Jerome Ford, who looked pretty decent for them last year. And then they went and signed Deontay Foreman, who also I think can grind, the hard yards. He's a bigger back. They can roll with those two. And I think maybe Cleveland looks to pass the ball more this year with Chubb out. We'll see. They want to get something out of their Watson investment. But for me, it's just Chubb. I know he's going around 9-10 right now, the 9-10 round. It just feels too rich for me because there's other younger players who are healthy going in that range that I'd rather take a shot on than have Chubb sitting on my roster. And depending on when, for each, I know like super bracket, you got 12 weeks of the regular season. If I'm holding on to him for 6-7 weeks, hoping he comes back, what's he going to give me when he is back? Is he going to be, a 5 to 10 carry guy? I don't see him getting a full workload right off the bat. So you're pushing towards the playoffs, and I don't know if he's going to help me. So I would just rather avoid it and just not go with that, with that type of player on my team. For a guy that I kind of lean towards is in a similar range, but this Brian Robinson from Washington.
Mm-hmm.
To me, Eckler, as you say, he's washed. I don't personally. That's my feeling. I think he's going to have a role. They paid him, whatever. I know you love the word "wash," so I had to throw it in. I just had to slide that in there for you. But Brian Robinson's a guy like the Kingsbury offense. When he was with Arizona, he lined up a lot in shotgun. I think when they had James Conner, they had Kenyon Drake. They all ran pretty well. And I think Brian Robinson's a solid back. He can catch the ball. He's not going to be that elite. I think that's going to be Eckler's main role. He's going to be that pass catching back. But when you have a rookie quarterback, you got a new coach who he leans. He's a defensive guy, and he's going to want to lean on the running game a little bit. Brian Robinson, for me, I mean, I like him in that range. Because he's going. What is he? I had to see his ADP. He's probably around 9-ish.
Yeah, it's right now, Brian, and this is Fantasy Pros ADP. Running back 34, middle of the 9th round, smack dab in the middle.
And I think if he has a full workload, he can give you similar numbers to what Najee has been giving us, about 1,000 yards, 6 to 8 touchdowns, give or take, a couple catches. But he's a guy that I feel like he slips down and he's just staring me in the face every time. And why not? As my RB2, RB3, maybe even 4, depending on my build. But I do like him.
Okay, I think I can. I think I can live with that. And despite the fact that you use that terrible descriptor, we'll still give you an invite to come play in Kentucky. You'll just have to draft against Balky in every draft. We'll just make sure that you're up against Balky.
Don't give him that advantage, Ferrell.
I kind of was against him last year in Vegas because he was doing a couple drafts. I don't know if he was drafting for himself.
No, he was not drafting for himself.
No.
He did not go up against Balky.
Because I could hear him calling out the picks.
What it was some of those higher, like the big paybacks in the high societies, the 5K and 10K buy-ins, not everybody is in person. So they will be online drafting, and when they put their pick in, I announce it to the live players there.
Oh, okay. That's what I heard you out there, and I was like,
Yep. No, that was me. I wasn't drafting those players, and I always hate it when I had to say Albert Okuwepa now. That was like, don't.
They give you all the tough names.
Oh God, it was so frustrating.
Balky was truly a beard in that draft. That's what he was.
He was a busy man for sure.
Yeah. It always is. It's busy, but it's fun. Guys, let's do one final question here. This is from Mr. Bakes a lot in the YouTube chat. Now he's in a 12-man Superflex tight end premium IDP league. Let's not worry about IDP because I don't think it really applies here for his question. But Superflex, tight end premium, hey, we got those formats in the FFPC. Who would you rather take here? Justin Jefferson, Anthony Richardson, Jamar Chase, and Christian McCaffrey are all available. Now, this is not a dynasty league. This is 12-man Superflex. He is the 10th pick. These are the players available. Shawn, you look at that. Does one name stand out more so than the other ones?
I'm going McCaffrey there. I mean,
McCaffrey.
he's the 1-2 in pretty much every draft. I'm not passing on him. He's got a guaranteed workload. Shanahan refuses to take him off the field even when they're up by 20. He catches the ball, he runs the ball, he scores. It's got to be McCaffrey for me.
Okay, I take it back. Mr. Bakeslack just chimed in. It is a dynasty draft, so that may change things a little bit. Now, I will say this: if we look at the mojo on dynasty Superflex leagues, Christian McCaffrey his ADP slips to the 211, so he'd be going at the end of the second round. You have Justin Jefferson going at the 107. Anthony Richardson is going at that same spot, basically. Jamar Chase at the end of the first round. So ADP would say Jefferson here, but it's close. Ferrell, do you have any thoughts on this?
My answer is yes. No, Chase.
Chase over Jefferson
Yeah.
because of the uncertainty at quarterback for Minnesota.
Well, because the great quarterback in Cincinnati really doesn't,
Okay.
So I'm going to turn it positive, Balky.
Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, I was just going to say, being that it's a super flex, I can't fault you if you want to go Anthony Richardson.
Right.
His upside is crazy. He's got that quarterback one upside, his rushing. He's got weapons galore in Indy, and he's got an offensive coach.
He does have all those things, but myself and Mr. Bakes-a-Lot are on the same page.
That's what I would say here too. Mr. Bakes-a-Lot saying I'm leaning Chase. I could see the argument for Chase or Jefferson. I guess I would lean towards Jefferson here. But the fact that he's already leaning Chase, the great Ferrell Elliott is saying Jamar Chase. Go with your gut. Your first instinct is usually right.
Always.
So that's what we'll roll with there.
Trust your gut.
Trust your gut. Sean, we trusted you tonight and you did not let us down. We will continue to follow you on the X at the_green_1. We will see you. Hopefully you can stop by on Tuesday night and make a pick live on the air. That'd be tremendous as well. Good luck in that draft as you're gunning not only for $1 million in the Fantasy Pros Championship, but $1 million in the FFPC main event. And welcome to the Joes family for 2024. I am so excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. And by the way, maybe you could pop on that broadcast too and make a pick live on
Love to.
Everybody's going to get to know you over the next couple of months here for sure. Sean, awesome. Thank you so much for spending your Friday with us, dude. Be good. We'll talk with you.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. That is Shawn Green, ladies and gentlemen. The fresh 2024 FFPC Joe, one of 42 that we announced. In case you missed the announcement, you can go back earlier and watch it. This podcast will probably be up in an hour or so as well. So you can check it out there when that's out. And like I said, we'll post something on the FFPC website. FantasyMojo.com will also have it as well. Farrell, a few emails tonight we'll go through. Gary in Opelika, Florida. Never been there, but it sounds lovely. Hey, Balky and Farrell, which aging running back is going to have the better season, Alvin Kamara or Joe Mixon?
Joe Mixon's going to have the better season. Good change of scenery for him. He's going to respond. He's playing with a little chip on his shoulder. I like Joe Mixon.
I'm going to say Mixon, but for a different reason. I'm really starting to like Kendra Miller quite a bit in New Orleans. And if that happens, if this is the year of Kendra Miller, it's going to be at the expense of Alvin Kamara. These guys are basically going right next to each other in draft. Yes. And I trust Kendra Miller a lot more than I trust any of the Texans running backs. So I'm going to say Mixon as well there. That's who you should be drafting. Let's see. Who is this now? This is, I got to bring it over here. I can't read. Glenn in Crider's Corners, Pennsylvania. Hey, fellas, are you guys down on Courtland Sutton enough to draft Brian Thomas over him? Thank you for the email, Glenn. I will say this about Courtland Sutton. My God, was he touchdown dependent last year? 10 touchdowns. I'm not the biggest Brian Thomas guy in the world, but I think it's enough for me, and it's late enough in the draft where I'm going to go with the unknown upside. I'm going to go with the mystery box. Yeah, I'm going to take Brian Thomas over Courtland Sutton, Farrell.
That's an easy one, I think. That's one the Dizzle would make all day long. And let's don't even look at Sutton's problems. Let's look at Brian Thomas, a very young player, obviously. We think about the COVID year where we all hustled from casino in Las Vegas and drafted the FFPC. And it doesn't feel like that long ago, but, Brian Thomas was a junior in high school then. So we're in a situation where we've also playing for the $275 million man there at quarterback. So why not? This is let's go, Brian.
Final one tonight, Brian in Chicago. Brandon Cooks or Jerry Jeudy, who has the higher ceiling for 2024? I appreciate you both. Thank you, Brian in Chicago. We appreciate you as well. I don't think either one of these guys has that high of a ceiling. However, Farrell, I think that Dallas team this year is going to be throwing the ball a lot. Like Dak Prescott's going to have round-the-clock attention to make sure that shoulder, that elbow, that arm is going to be fresh each and every Sunday. And for that reason, I'm going to take Cooks over Jeudy, and I think he's got the higher ceiling because I trust that passing offense more. In Cleveland, they have Cooper. We know Njoku's there as well. But Deshaun Watson, I don't know. I mean, I have not seen the Deshaun Watson from Houston yet in Cleveland, and now here we are 2 years later, and it still hasn't happened. And oh, by the way, I haven't seen the Jerry Jeudy from Alabama in the pros yet. So that's the other thing to be worried about here. It's a twofold thing.
You have always been a Brandon Cooks guy, and I wouldn't leave him now, especially in this question. I think if we had had this prior to the draft, I might have been no. This would be Cooks all the way for me. Cooks will probably be shooting up the board as the season starts, and I think you just let the proverbial cat out of the bag.
Yeah, I probably did. That will complete our show tonight. Ferrell Elliott, thank you so much for joining me tonight. In regards to the KFFSC, what are we looking at as far as online drafts right now? I know I'm in the midst of a main event slow draft, having a lot of fun with that. The next one is going to start when it's full, and then we have a live draft potentially starting this weekend again, or is it next week?
We've got a slow draft ready to go. We've got some live drafts scheduled, and if they fill, we will play them.
There you go.
So everyone who plays in Kentucky knows that the heart of our operation is the live events, both in Cincinnati on the 18th and in Louisville at Caesars Southern Indiana on the 23rd to the 25th of August. But we do have online play, and it features third round reversal, and it's a banger of a time and great fun.
It absolutely is. It is a lot of fun for sure. And we will continue to have a lot of fun talking fantasy football with you on the show. Ferrell, so much. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. We'll do this again a week from today.
Yes, sir.
That is Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. I want to thank him. I want to thank Shawn Green, the FFPC, Rob Rice, and of course, each and every one of you for hanging out with us tonight. Or streaming, downloading, listening later, whatever you're doing, viewing later. We appreciate it. We will be back next Friday at 10/9 Central. Watch last night's High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network or the FFPC socials with myself and sports gambling podcast Ryan Kramer. We will be drafting on the show this coming Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Theo Greminger from Player Profiler and Dave Terpoli. Excuse me again. My goodness. I'm getting all verklempt talking about drafting. I'm so excited about it. But they are going to join me. They're going to be drafting an FFPC Best Ball Tournament draft at 7 p.m. this coming Thursday, live on the Better Sports Network. That's going to be a lot of fun as well. I can't harp on this enough. The FFPC Fantasy Pros Early Bird promo expires at midnight Pacific time tomorrow. So make sure you are jumping in now to get those free $35 FFPC team credits. And a golden way to do it, we have a midnight draft starting in 45 minutes that is already half full. These drafts are going to start to fill fast and furious now, especially as we get to the halfway point or even 2/3 of the way full. Those last few spots usually go pretty quick. So this is a great opportunity tonight. Register, draft the team tonight or draft it by June 30th. You get a free $35 FFPC team credit, and you can do that up to 3 times as well. So check that out. myffpc.com. Main event drafts are going strong right now. Main event slow drafts, as well as the slow and live FFPC Best Ball and Superflex Best Ball tournaments going strong with drafts filling up all the time as well. Empire Leagues, Dynasty League startups still available. We have plenty of those popping off tomorrow. If you want to get in one of those, do so right now at myffpc.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on this video, share it, and get notified each and every time we go live. And we will see you on Tuesday night. Aiden LaCorey, myself, FFPC Fantasy Pros Championship live draft coverage of the Fantasy Pros Championship. Those 12 owners, including tonight's guest, Shawn Green, will be gunning for a $1 million grand prize, and we will have it pick-by-pick action for you right here on the FFPC YouTube channel. With that, thanks for watching, everybody. For Ferrell Elliott, for Shawn Green, I'm Eric Balkman. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
One other thing I should mention, Mr. Bakeslot, and I'll throw up his question on the YouTube screen right now. Would you rather have Kenneth Walker or Rachaad White in Dynasty right now, full PPR? Yes, I would rather have Rachaad White over Kenneth Walker. I don't necessarily think that there is a huge threat with Bucky Irving or anybody else in Tampa right now to Rachaad White. I think he made it through free agency and the draft just fine. And I think that Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet will continue to be the two-headed monster in Seattle. And unless one of them's hurt, they're going to be splitting action there. The volume is going to be higher with Rachaad White. And the other thing, too, is I think the better pass catcher in Seattle is probably Charbonnet, which works against Kenneth Walker as well. So I would rather have Rachaad White in Dynasty over Kenneth Walker right now. And that will conclude this evening's broadcast. Thanks for watching, everybody. Talk with you again on Tuesday night with myself and Aiden LaCory. Talk with you on Thursday with Theo Greminger and Dave Tripoli. And talk with you on Friday, once again, with Ferrell Elliott. Be good, everybody. And happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, including my dad.